Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark is produced by Guillermo del Toro, but he did not direct this film. The movie revolves around the legend of Sarah, a girl with horrible secrets who's turned her tortured life into a series of stories. A group of teens find the book with these stories, and guess what? The stories start coming to life and start taking the lives of many in the town. Now, the first thing I want to get out of the way, because it's just the front and center of my mind here, is that this picture begged to be a horror anthology. I think back to Creepshow and the Tales from the Crypt TV series, where they were standalone stories with different characters. And I think the effort that was put into trying to create this overarching narrative where we can put these several stories under one umbrella, you really just felt it struggled to do that. And as a huge fan of horror like myself, and someone who did read these books as a kid, I don't have a crystal clear memory of them aside from the terrifying artwork, which is still effective to this day. But back to the point of doing what they tried to do here, it just seemed so unnatural. Now, the scary sequences in this movie are good. The jump scares are effective, the way they build tension in these moments are very solid, but the problem is, this movie drags in between these scenes, and let's be honest, that's the majority of the picture. I mean, it's not like it's just an hour and 47 minutes of these horror sequences. They're here and there, and in between, it just felt like it was lacking energy. Now, there are a lot of criticisms to make against modern Hollywood and the way they make movies, but I gotta give credit where credit is due. And that is they've taken films that would really benefit from an R rating, and when they go to make them PG-13, you actually don't notice it as much, and it actually works out quite well. However, with Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, this is one of those experiences where I definitely felt the PG-13 rating and thought this could absolutely benefit from being a little edgier than it was. I thought a lot of the characters were miscast, and I don't mean all of them, just enough to where it wasn't effective for me, and I just didn't get invested in it.
Hey Maniac, how can you enjoy movies like Nightmare on Elm Street 4 and Jason Takes Manhattan? Are you saying they have amazing characters? Are you telling me those are really great films? What's the disconnect between that and this movie?
Ah, not a bad question, honestly, but I'll point out your blind spot, and that is because I love Freddy Krueger. I love Jason Voorhees. There aren't any really horror icons in this movie, and if you're going to point out a couple of the things like the Scarecrow and the lady near the end, they're not on screen enough to really be icons. They're underused. Some of the monsters are quickly introduced and just as quickly removed, so they don't really hang around. Scary Stories takes place in 1968, and I never felt fully immersed in it. It just seemed like it could have been any decade, and it wouldn't have mattered all that much. There are some scenes where they drop in President Nixon's election, and that just felt so vapid. I just couldn't understand. It was a very poor attempt at trying to remind us of the era that we're in. And there were some other things like that. But, you know, I think back to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which just came out a couple weeks ago, and how that movie took place in 1969, and I was there. Tarantino brought me into that world, and I know it's a little unfair to compare Scary Stories to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I get it. Trust me. I'm not even trying to do that. I think maybe these movies being so closely released, I just couldn't help it. This was stuck between being a Goosebumps movie and a straight-on full horror film. And that goes back to what I was saying earlier about how I felt this could have benefited from an R rating, and I don't say that as often these days. Again, Hollywood's actually done a pretty good job at getting that right. You know, I think back to a movie I rewatched recently, Poltergeist. I hadn't seen it in years, but that movie is still intense and creepy as hell. And that doesn't have an R rating, but it didn't feel constrained by itself. I mean, why couldn't Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark have done the same thing? And believe me, they are trying with this movie. They want to be something special. They want to be something great. And it isn't. Guys, I'm going to give Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark a 5 out of 10. Now, it is important to know that I saw this movie with a group of 4 people. Everyone enjoyed it except for me. So I might be the odd man out. That's totally possible this time around. but that's the truth of the matter. And it's just that I didn't think this was good. I didn't think it was even mediocre, which I thought it may have ended up being after the first act. There were some moments where I kept my optimism alive, but at the end of the day, this movie just suffers from, I think, maybe trying to create that overarching narrative when it didn't need it. I think that a lot of the actors were miscast. I just felt disconnected from a lot of the movie. And yeah, the jump scares and some of the moments of tension are effective, but you got to have a little bit more than that. I almost think they would have benefited from this just being absolute B-movie schlock, just being goofy, really campy. I almost think that you would have had a much better picture if you had just done that instead of trying to treat this so seriously. This one I just couldn't get on board with. What did you all think of this film? I think a lot of people are going to enjoy it more than I did. I'm going to tell you that for sure. And again, just because I don't like the movie doesn't mean I'm attacking you. It doesn't mean I'm attacking your identity or talking about a film here. And I just wasn't a fan of it. And this is my honest analysis of it. Guys, as always, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe so you can stay inside the mind of a movie maniac.